Hello, welcome everyone to tonight's Teacher Talk. This is brought to you by Life Changer of the Year, a K through 12 educator recognition program that is funded and founded by National Life Group and the National Life Foundation. So we've been doing Teacher Talk now for almost a year, and this kind of came about through the pandemic as a way to unite educators all across the country to provide connection and just to let educators and school employees share ideas. There's a little bit of venting that happens, but really it's a lot of big ideas and it's an incredible community. So Teacher Talk tonight and our last three series, I believe, have been powered by the National Coalition for Safe Schools. That is NCSS. And so tonight is brought to you again by NCSS. And we are talking about something incredibly important, and that is self-care. It's something that we probably couldn't talk about enough. I am going to introduce tonight's moderator, Diane Smokorowski. She is such an incredible woman. She has been with us through more than several sessions at this point, and we thank her so much. She's a 2019 National Teacher Hall of Fame inductee, 2013 Kansas Teacher of the Year, and is currently the coordinator of digital literacy and common sense media in the Wichita Public Schools. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Diane, and Diane is going to kick off tonight's session as well as turn it over to our incredible lineup of panelists. Thank you, Diane.
Thank you, Mallory, and welcome everyone. Happy Tuesday. And no matter where you are in the school year, you're in that fourth quarter, you might be on the last day of school or the night before the last day of school, as one of our panelists is today. And we want to say congratulations. You have this new opportunity to say that you have had the wackiest year ever, but we are stronger on the other end of it. So welcome. And today, because of that topic, our focus is on teacher self-care today. And what a prime time to talk about that as we start to transition to the summer months or summer school teaching, or if you're doing PD or just taking a nap. We're just excited to have you with us here today. I'm going to have the panelists introduce themselves. We'll start with Arlinda.
Hello, everyone. My name is Arlinda Davis. I'm from Birmingham, Alabama. I've been a first grade teacher for 26 years, and I am the current WE ambassador for the United States. I work with teachers across the United States. I also am the 2020 Teacher of the Year for Sanford Harmony, and also a Life Changer of the Year nominee from last year. And I'm just so happy to be here to celebrate you as teachers.
And Marie.
So technology and difficulties are definitely in line with what we're all been going through for over the last year. Again, my name is Marie Arterberry. I'm so honored to be with you. I am an LCSW, a licensed clinical social worker from the Broward County Public Schools, and I direct our employee assistance program for the past 20 years. So I am always excited for the opportunity to support those who are supporting our students, because that is truly what makes it possible for the advancement of our students. So again, I'm really excited to be here. Good evening, everyone.
Glad to have you. And Taya.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Taya Kinsley, and I am coming to you from Evanston. I have Evanston Township High School right in my background here. And I've worn a couple different hats, and I get to support all of our student services staff as well as the larger school, as well as an associate principal. And having been a social worker in the school and pushing into classrooms a lot, I have deep empathy for teachers in that way. And I'm also a licensed clinical social worker and a mama. So I also have empathy for those of you who are parents of teens as well as teaching teens. Great to be here. Thank you.
Wonderful. And Luisa.
Hi, everybody. My name is Luisa Plumo here, and I am a kindergarten teacher in Omaha, Nebraska. I have been teaching for 17 years, the last 7 in a dual language immersion program. I also do a lot of teacher leadership at the district and state level, specifically with young children in kindergarten, and then a lot with our new teachers. So I'm excited to talk tonight about a lot of the things that we've tried that have got us through this insane year.
I think that is a pretty stellar panel. And all of our attendees, this is an interactive opportunity webinar experience. So we would love for you to post questions. We will ask our own and then we'll pull from the audience. So please feel free to post questions as we go along. All right, friends. So here's the first question. We talk about self-care and that teachers need self-care, but I think each of us might define that differently. What about you, Luisa? How would you define that?
I would say I've done a lot of deep thinking, as I'm sure all of us in this pandemic have, about what self-care really looks like. It has always been a buzzword, right? The last few years, let's all practice self-care, but it doesn't always happen in real life when you're told to practice self-care and then you're given a long list of what to do. So for me, self-care really means setting boundaries on a personal level, you know, what I'm going to do with my time outside of school, but also on a professional level, what I'm saying yes to, and what I'm saying no to, so that I could say yes to more things for myself. So really encouraging boundary setting for myself and then for those around me.
When I think about self-care, I think about having the ability to be able to find those things that are encouraging to you, that help support yourself, to help you know how amazing you are. Because a lot of times you don't know how amazing you are. You beat up on yourself. You kind of are critical of yourself. And so when you have self-care, you find those things that make you comfortable and able to give more of yourself without having an empty cup. You know, when you have an empty cup, you can't give. So I think when you have self-care, you can do those things that help support you and help encourage you and help just make you be able to give other people.
I think for me, when I think about self-care, I think about the idea of self-inclusion, because all too often as caregivers, we're always putting other things in front. This is more, this is really important. This isn't really important. With self-care, it's really just about including yourself in your own life, because all too often we don't even make it into our own day. And I know with instructors is that you sometimes you don't even get a chance to go to the bathroom. It's so we talk about the basics of self-care and that being part of it. So for me, self-care is really just including myself in my day.
I love that. And as a middle school person, those restroom breaks were treasured moments in the day if you got one. Okay, and Taya, define it for me. Self-care.
Yeah, so I think to add a little bit, I think about self-care and I think about what it is and what it isn't. And for me, it isn't just bubble baths, right? I think sometimes we think of self-care and we almost kind of put it to the side like we're all referencing because, it's just fluff. It's not something that, we need. Or it's just bubble baths. And so it can be bubble baths, and that's what can be bringing you great joy. But it's also about identifying what are the things that sustain you. And when I think about self-care, I really think about self-care as a muscle that you have to activate and you got to use. And sometimes it atrophies and sometimes I forget to use it and I have to pick myself back up and rebuild that muscle and forgive myself when I'm not, and think about it as a daily practice that I need to really put into my calendar. And, I know several people have already mentioned that too, of we have to insert it intentionally because otherwise it goes by the wayside.
For certain. And Marie, I know that you've been kind of talking about this idea of separating your work self from your personal self when it comes to that self-care. Can you kind of explain that a little more?
Sure. I refer to it kind of as disassociation. And what I mean by that is that oftentimes we think about, I don't want to take my personal stuff into work, and that's fine. And so that's a level of disassociation that's necessary. That, when I can't go in and cry or yell because I feel like it and those types of things. But the problem with it is that if we begin to live in the form of disassociation, where I don't actually reconnect to myself, know where I am. And I think about when you're disassociating, out of necessity, it's really about knowing when you put yourself down, where you left yourself, so that you know where to go and get yourself. Because oftentimes when you practice disassociation so much, it becomes something that you can do without awareness.
And for that, I think schools need to consider and districts, how are we going to breed and nurture a culture of support? One that's authentic. Taya, how would you respond to that?
Well, I'm still thinking about Marie and where I left myself. So thank you for that cue, Marie. That's great. So when I think about the kind of culture, there's so many facets to it and how we're providing, more of that kind of overt, really clear acts of support. We had a dance party and, I was maybe not showing off the best moves, but showing off moves and just being able to be real, but also holding space for each other. We had a lot of losses this year and we created different spaces where, I was able to cry because I lost loved ones, including some of our students and members of our community, and being able to show that authenticity and how we can be vulnerable together has been really important for showing that culture of care. And also just being transparent about when we get it right and when we don't get it right together, and being able to pick ourselves back up and go, okay, but we're trying, right? And so those are just little elements of how we can do that culture of care.
And Luisa, you were sharing a little bit earlier that this is part of what you're doing in Omaha. How do you and your other leaders build that culture of self-care and support?
So last year, and I'll just speak to my school specifically, we have a large staff of about 100 teachers. And because we all went virtual very suddenly last summer, we decided to do a lot of book clubs virtually. We had, I would say, 85 of our staff members voluntarily did these book clubs. We were able to pay them. And they were all about content, right? So like how to build relationships, how to be teacher leaders. But the magic that came out of it were the relationships that were built. And keep in mind, we'd all work together, but we have 3 stories on our school. And so we were getting teachers from different floors connecting. And then we decided to pursue a book club that would go throughout the year. It's Elena Aguilar's book. It's called Onward. If you haven't read it, it's phenomenal. It's meant to go through the entire year. So what teachers typically experience in November, you're already discussing in the chapter. And we had 45 teachers sign on to do this. So they would meet once a month in small groups. We had 4 sessions, so there were about 12 of us. And we would really be able to be intentional about our goal. And we were able to be vulnerable. We were able to acknowledge that we were feeling scared, or like we suddenly weren't good teachers, or like we didn't know how to show up for work when we were worried about our loved one who might be in the hospital at the moment. And so we were really able to honor this idea of doing the work of self-care instead of just saying, oh, let's do self-care, and then holding each other accountable. So then when we would have a staff meeting and somebody would say, oh, here's your long list, we would pipe in and say, but first we need to balance that. Let's take a moment of gratitude. Or like tonight after school, a bunch of teachers decided to play loud music and decorate our school sidewalk with chalk, not just for our kids so that it's great, but so that we would have time to talk with each other and just bond with each other, and really being intentional about that space. One of the book clubs we did last summer was Thomas Murray's Authentic EDU. And he used an analogy that we've all heard, right? We've all heard when you're on the airplane, the oxygen mask drops, you put it on yourself. But what Tom says in his book is that's really a terrible way to think about self-care, because when do you put that oxygen mask on? When the plane's going down, right? When there's a problem. We shouldn't be waiting until there's a problem to take care of each other. We should really start now and be intentional. And what we've really done at my school is know our triggers. So each of us have done a lot of deep work about what is it that sets us off, but then also knowing our fillers, like we were talking about, right? We need to know how to fill our own cups, but then knowing how to talk about that, how to name those emotions, and how to really have those courageous conversations with each other, where I could say, Emma, it really sounds like you're struggling. And Emma won't feel like she has to be perfect. Instead, she can be real. And so we've just done a lot of work that way this year, being intentional and coaching each other, because it is a process from what we were doing, where we were all trying to be the best that we could be, not acknowledging that we weren't taking care of our whole selves.
That sounds like a dream place to work, to be honest, where you're all in this collective culture of we're going to lift each other up. That has to have been a wonderful thread of happiness this year for everyone in the midst of a wild year. Arlinda, what about resilience? How does that play in all of this?
Resilience is very important because one thing people expect for teachers is the buzzword of you must be resilient, or teachers have been so resilient. And sometimes, though, I feel as though teachers are expected to be resilient and they can't have those moments. She was talking about vulnerability. You need to have moments to say, I want to be encouraged, or I need encouragement, I need support, I need and that's what self-care is about. A lot of times you're pushing so hard to be resilient. You're pushing so hard to say, hey, I'm Superman, I'm Superwoman, I can do this. And I know they say teachers are superheroes, and we are, but at the same time, we need that time to also say, I need someone to talk to. I was talking about in our school, we have a thing called um, our faculty meeting. And the faculty meeting isn't what you expect when you think about teachers coming together with your principal. We have it after school. And it's a group of teachers that we get together, and we're each other's support system. We can relax and we can talk about things that we need to talk about. We can have those very needed discussions to kind of empty all of our baggage out and say, hey, these are things I'm dealing with. And it's a time where you build relationships, and it's a time to support each other. It's a time to be able to be vulnerable and get that support so that you can go back and be a little more resilient after you've gotten that kind of thing to help hold you up. And so I love having our faculty meetings. It's a good time for new teachers or teachers who've been teaching a while to kind of talk and discuss and just be each other's support system.
And that's a faculty meeting I'd look forward to. One of those of we're just going to be real with one another. And what a blessing that had to have been for everyone.
Yes.
As an administrator, how do you also help build that culture of community and self-care?
Well, I think one of the things that we've really tried to do is encourage that the vulnerability is, and what we kind of define as strength is actually vulnerability. That asking for what you need, that talking about these things, that's actually not weakness. That takes way more strength to be able to ask for what you need. And I try to practice it. I literally did this earlier this week when I said to staff, I'm feeling like I got a lot of balls in the air too. Can you please help me? If I haven't responded to something, can you help make sure I'm being responsive and cue me, right? Just even those little acts. So I'm modeling it as well and encouraging all of our staff to do the same. And I think we spend a lot of time checking in on each other, and really goes back to those relationships, and also receiving when someone else is checking in on me. I think it's so easy for all of us who are doers and givers, and teachers are just, seen as the kind of penultimate givers. And we have to give and receive. And what does that look like in those relationships being developed? And so, some of it is about the structure of doing these things, and some of it is just that informal, hey, I was just checking in. How are you doing? Right? I noticed this the other day. And how did you respond to that? I saw it in the news, right? What's going on? How was that for you? I remember you lost someone, right? And just checking in. And I think that's been really critical for us to sustain each other.
Indeed. Marie, how about in Florida? What are you doing to build those cultures of self-care?
Myself. One of the things for the employee assistance program is that we've done a lot of throughout the district, because the employee assistance program we're responsible for the district. So one of the things that we've done is have a lot of district-wide team building events, and the idea is to just consider all of us a team. And so we've had events virtual that have invited the individuals from the entire district. And so what we've done is we've encouraged you to say, get together with a couple of people from your site, or if you believe in the 6 degrees of separation, we're saying there's only 6 people maximum between all of us. So being able to connect with people throughout the district without a lot of effort, when usually we'd have to drive somewhere. So it's really kind of maximizing the benefit of the virtual world, is that you can connect with more people more easily. And so that's really how we've really tried to maximize it for staff, is to have events and things that allow them to connect district wide to care for themselves and one another.
And those little connections make a huge difference. And attendees, I put in the chat for you is that we're really curious to know what your own school district has done to promote self-care for you. We're looking for all kinds of ideas, so please include those in the chat. And Marie, while we have you here in the front and center, I know you speak a lot to vulnerability, and that this sometimes comes with a negative connotation, but you're saying, oh no, we're not looking at it the right way. Can you share a little more?
Yeah, it's just like what Taya said, is that true. When you start talking about vulnerability and the fact that we think that, oh, it means I have to, be able to be weak and show my weaknesses around others and those types of things. And just like Taya said, is that truly when you start talking about being strong and brave enough to say it hurts right here, or this, is not good for me, that is what really takes a lot of strength. And we think about it that when we often say, oh, I don't want to say, that, or I don't want to say anything, that is because a lot of times we're fearful that what we say may not be well received, or that what we say may be judged. And when you start talking about the idea of being vulnerable, and I think what's beautiful that someone else said is being able to mirror that for someone, is that when I go to check in on someone, I can also be able to say, well, can I tell you a little bit about how I'm feeling, in addition to asking, how you feeling? Or if I'm asking someone about how they're being challenged, I'm also willing to share. I'm also willing to be able to model what I'm asking someone. It's so we start talking about being caregivers, is that, what, when I'm looking at doing that for someone else, am I willing to do that for myself? And one of the things I think is really, we'll probably consider bipolar, but I think it's important sometimes to think about ourselves in third person. And what I mean by that is that because caregivers take better care of others often than they do themselves, if you can say she needs, she would like, and if you start asking yourself, what does she need? What does he want? What would be helpful to him, in reference to yourself? It's the kind of able to separate yourself, but be able to include yourself at the same time, because a lot of times we don't stop and ask, what do you need? If you have a small child, a lot of times we will say to that child is, hey, do you need to go to the bathroom before we go? Or something of that nature. I use that example, but do we even do that for ourselves? Or do we say to somebody that we care about, what, if they need to move a little slower, if you have someone elderly in your family and you all are walking somewhere, you're going to be a little bit more patient with them. Or if someone you're with is, have some form of a challenge, we tend to, as caregivers, to really be willing to say, hey, it's okay, well, I'll walk slower with you. Hey, it's okay, I'll wait for you if you need to run and do that. And so doing that in third person for ourselves is one way to really practice being able to include ourselves. And that's really important, I think. And again, a level of vulnerability that's really useful to ourselves and others.
And you've received some kudos in the chat from one of the people in your own district, from Judy. And just listening to you, I have to agree, Judy, I'm already wishing that Marie lived in Kansas. So there we go. Let's think about this. Now that we are looking towards August or September, whenever you have your teacher report day in the fall, there's been this conversation around, we want to go back to normal, or do we go back to better? What have we learned this year? What do we know what we need to do differently? How can this school year launch better than just back to normal? Taya, what would you say?
So I think I'm going to appeal to those of you first who are list makers. So as a list maker who loves scratching things off the list, part of what I would say was, I think it's really important to start by making that list of, so what are the things that are making you excited about that you want to continue, that have been pieces that you did maybe even differently during the pandemic, that you realize this really works. I'm going to continue doing these components, and making a list of what it is that's bringing you joy. What is it that you didn't get to do before, but you really are looking forward to, and that's going to give you some energy, even though you're exhausted and you can barely pull, deep from those resources right now. And you know what? Fold it up and keep that list, because you can use that to sustain yourself. And sometimes as that moment, right? And so when we're thinking about going back and being better, some of these are from our lessons learned along the way. And then I think, you know, kind of again, you don't have to be a list maker to enjoy these things. But going back to the list making, I would say, what also do you think about that might get in the way of being better? So, what things might be sitting with you still around loss, because we want to make space for that, around the trauma or even kind of vicarious or secondary trauma that you've experienced by living through your students that you've given so much to and their lives that you've lived through, or maybe even resentful about some things that maybe happened in your district or maybe didn't or someone else's, but also what's making you anxious, because those are all real and we want to make space for them too, but we don't have to hold on to them. And so when I say making that list, it's not to hold it up and shine it every day. It's to fold it up, and that you can put away in a drawer. It's there if you need it. Those anxieties are there, but you don't have to hold on to it. And that's something I'm working on practicing doing too. And that means forgiveness for myself along the way as well. So really just thinking about, you know, utilizing those components and also making sure that I'm doing what I love along the way. And I love seeing students and love being with them and supporting staff who support students. So making sure that we're focused on that and that energy that we get. Where do we get our energy? Asking ourselves in those moments of self-reflection.
Luisa, back to better. What do you think?
So at the beginning of the pandemic, probably even shortly before, an artist that I follow on Instagram had this really interesting quote that says, "Not all storms are meant to cause damage. Some are there to clear your path." And I've really been reflecting on it and sharing it with all of my teacher friends and my not teacher friends, and just thinking, you know, as a classroom teacher, we have a very unique experience in this pandemic. And I'm sure every district is like this. A lot of the classroom rules are being made by people not in the classroom, which was already problematic before the pandemic. It's especially problematic during a pandemic when they're saying, oh, you know, keep your 6-year-olds 6 feet apart all day long. And I'm thinking, honey, have you taught 6-year-olds? There's no way you can keep them sitting still in a regular year, let alone in a pandemic year, you know? And so really using our unique experience as classroom teachers who were in the foxholes during this event to really advocate for what we know did work. I'm kind of like Taya was saying, making that list. But a big thing for me is to not make that list in isolation. So it's good for me to reflect every evening and talk with my husband or jot down lists, but then to connect with other people, whether they're my grade level team or other teachers in my building or other teachers around the country, and really finding that healing that happens in community and figuring out what do we do to go forward. And really, we should always be empowered as teachers, but right now we have the experience that nobody else has. And so using that experience to guide what happens, making sure that people are valuing human connections, the amount of connectivity that we had with families, the vulnerability that we had with families being able to zoom in and watch me make a fool of myself all day long as I taught and sang and danced in my own classroom by myself while families zoomed in and watched me. But really valuing those parts of the pandemic that got us closer to each other, closer to our families, and really kept us going forward. Just because we hopefully will be out of the pandemic doesn't mean we should lose those things.
Well said. Arlinda, when we're talking about going back to better, I know you had a question about who's better. Can you talk to me a little more about this?
Right. When I think about everything, and I think about teachers, and I think about us tapping into our greatness and tapping into those things that we have done that we naturally love to do, and that we naturally do with our kids, do with our staff and our faculty, that's our thing. And so when you think about who's better or what is better, you think about, like Louisa was saying, we know our children. We know the things that we love to do. We know the things that actually help build relationships and taps into what our kids love to do. So who better to kind of direct those people who are in charge to say, you know, we know what our kids are capable of. We know, like they were talking about, even saying the loss, that loss that we have. And so when I think about that, it's just like, is there really a loss? Because there were things we were doing that were great, and we did them through the pandemic. We might have had to kind of change how we did it, but our greatness that we have in us that we use to teach, they should look at what we're doing, ask us, talk to us, have a counsel if they need to kind of talk to the teachers to see what it is. That also, to me, taps into self-care, because when we can kind of contribute to saying these are the things we know work with our kids, then that kind of also helps us not have to be so stressed about them telling us, do this, all this list of things that we're going, that's not exactly what is great for our children. So I would say that there needs to be a meeting of the minds, and those minds are the teachers and people who actually work with children.
Mm-hmm. There was, in one of our previous sessions, they were talking about having empathy interviews with students when we were transitioning back into buildings, of just having students honor, this is what my life was when I was working remotely, and these are the concerns that I have. This is what I learned about myself that I can learn to time manage and things like that. Having empathy interviews with staff could be just as powerful as we start to redefine for the fall. Maureen, I know you had spoken with me a little bit earlier about choosing the right speed to go back to school, and that it was okay to choose the speed that works best for students, even if it wasn't, let's go warp speed to get all this lost learning. Can you tell a little bit more?
Yeah, when we talk about back to better too, is I think over functioning is something that is highly acceptable, and we kind of couch it in that word as multitasking. And truly, when we start talking about the fact that when our students and our staff are coming back together, you're looking at people who have been deprived of connection physically. So for a lot of the students, I almost think about it as a giant play date. Kind of, how are you doing? What are you doing? And when we start talking about that over functioning, it's kind of that, all right, we're going to get back to whatever that looks like, but being able to honor the fact that, what, going a little bit slower is something that we've all had the opportunity to do, and to hopefully recognize some of the benefits. I mean, how many times have we been overwhelmed and said, stop the world, I want to get off for a few minutes? Well, we kind of had that. Everybody was pretty much standing still at the same time. It was truly, like most of us have said, this is like a crazy B-rated movie. But truly, it's the opportunity that we all kind of stopped, and you had that opportunity. And so as we restart, we don't want to get on the situation where we're just racing that merry-go-round around as fast as we can, because something's going to fly off.
Indeed. And it, perhaps this will give us the opportunity to, as a collective education group, we're not going to start the year with diagnostic testing. We're going to start building relationship from children from the very beginning and with each other. And that going slow allows us to go really fast later down the road. Thank you for that insight. All right, friends, this isn't the panelists as well as our attendees. This is the part of the session where we're going to do a collection of ideas. And we're curious to know what you have done or what you will do this summer for self-care just for you. Taya, what is your plan, or what are some ideas you do for self-care for yourself?
So I had shared previously with folks, but one of the things that I did was I finally bought a Peloton bike, and it took me a while to get there. And a friend of mine who was an accountability buddy kind of said to me, you should just finally get the bike. Stop talking about it. And so that's been a great form of kind of mindfulness. It's a self-care. I have a great time. But so there are a couple other pieces for me. I love being outdoors, and I share a paddleboard that several of us kind of rent a space at the lake, and I started doing 4:30 a.m. paddle boards last summer, and I am a morning girl. So but taking pictures is another thing that brings me joy. So doing those things made me so happy, and so I'm definitely going to continue to do that, and really think about how I am going to put on my calendar the act every day of how am I going to make sure that I'm inserting something, whether it's a walk, whether it's and for me, I found like painting rocks, oddly. I never thought I'm not an artist at all, but I got into pointillism on rocks. So you never know those things that you suddenly find joy in. But I'm so looking forward to sitting around fire pits and being with friends and family in ways that I haven't before, and then being able to connect with students in the fall. So those are a few of the things that I'm going to be holding on to.
Arlinda, what about you?
Well, I have a big family, and one of the things that gives me joy is spending time with my family. This past year has kind of been an eye opener to more appreciating that time with them, and so um, I really want to tap into some of my happy triggers. We talk about having anger triggers. And so I have happy triggers. And one of my things I love to do is listen to music and sing. And my kids always sing with me. So I think I like to spend some time just finding out what they like and kind of engaging with them and us doing something collectively as a family. Um, just trying to learn more about them because I spend so much time learning more about my children I teach that sometimes we neglect our kids as far as knowing everything about them. And so I think I would like to take this summer to do that.
I can definitely almost hear you all singing and dancing together, seeing all this, and then just having that opportunity to celebrate.
I
Um,
think I remind myself of the from Sound of Music. That's what I put myself and my kids in the mind of.
and when I see you spread your arms and spin, I
Yes.
know you're in your happy space. I love that so much. All right, Marie, what brings you joy and for self-care?
For my, I have a couple. I talked about walking, but one of the things that just came to mind that was really funny to me is that I historically have a black thumb. That means basically I buy plants that people say, oh no, you'll never be able to kill it. You can, and I can manage to do that. So one of the things that's been bringing me joy is that I have had the time to actually research the plants. And I realized that plants are just like people in that we all need different amounts of different things in order to bring for us to grow, for us to have balance. And so studying the plants and collecting them has been really funny for me. I have a group of plants that are called the Golden Girls. And they're on my patio, and it's really funny because even though they're all of the same species, they even still have, in my opinion, they each still have their own personalities. And so it's been very fulfilling for me to not kill them. And for them to actually grow. So I've been really excited, and I go home and I'm like, oh, you guys are still here. All right, I got this. So it's been really exciting for me to actually not kill plants and to like have them grow and to really weirdly enough develop relationships and know like who needs to be watered first and those types of things, being able to really be conscious, if you will, and pay attention at a level that I didn't know that I had. So it's been really exciting and really fulfilling in that way. When I go away, I actually have my girlfriend who is actually good with plants. I'm like, please, can you, like, this person is going to watch the dog, but I need you to watch the plants. So that's been really exciting and fun for me as well.
Well, it's a different sense of responsibility. Look, I've owned this and my plants are thriving. It really does bring a little sense of accomplishment, doesn't it? I'm so proud of you. I have to tell you, because I
Thank
too
you.
have a tendency to have the plants see me and they'll go, please don't take me home. So I'm really glad that you're thriving with all this. Louisa, what are some things that you have that bring you joy or help with your own self-care?
Well, now I'm super distracted, Marie, because I want to see your plants because I'm also recently obsessed with plants. And like, I make my husband like move his important office stuff out of the way so my plants can have the good sun, and they're in the way of our sunroom. So I'll have to get your email after and find pictures of your plants. For myself, this summer will be the first summer in 17 years that I am not teaching or being the principal for summer school. And I said no to summer school without knowing what I'm doing, and I kind of, for me, it's borderline exciting and borderline I'm freaking out because I've never not had something to do. So, I want to learn to cook because I don't. My husband does all the cooking, and I figure if I can learn to cook one meal by the end of summer, it'll be a success. And I just want to spend time like going slow. Marie, what you're saying about we go so fast, Brene Brown has this really good quote about it takes a lot of courage to rest and play in a society that values overworking the way that we do. And I just want to kind of do that. I just want to go slow and read the billion books that I have piled up that I want to read, and talk with our neighbors longer than a quick hello as I'm walking our dog, and just kind of go slow. And, Arlinda was saying, get to know her own children. I kind of want to get to know myself more, right? Like, not just what do I like to do when I'm in a hurry that I have to do, but what do I like to do when I have all the time in the world? So a little nervous, but also excited.
I have a feeling that your days will feel fulfilled even if you're not doing a whole lot, right? Because you'll have time to complete that thought. And the idea of reading a book that is just fiction, just for the sake of just opening a book up, I'm almost getting excited thinking about it, Luisa. How many are on your reading list? Do you have like a stack or a stack?
Oh, no, I would say I have like 5 stacks. Like in every room, I have a different stack. Like in case I'm in the living room, here's 5 books I might start reading. If I'm upstairs, if I'm in our attic, like really, who's so lazy that I wouldn't walk upstairs to get a book? But I have stacks. Like, this is a great living room book I could read. So I have a billion books to read.
I expect the social media post of, I'm in my living room books today. Tomorrow I'm going to be with my attic books. I want to see these down the road. All right. Taya, we talked about the Peloton. I'm sorry. Who have I forgotten? Did we cover everyone? I think did I forget anyone? Marie, did we ask you already what you were going to do for fun? We talked about the plants. I'm sorry, friends. I was just so wrapped up in all these stories. For myself, though, what I am looking to do this summer is this whole idea of creation. I find great joy in designing something for teachers. I'm working on some teacher PDs. I've made collaborations with several of the museums and zoos and nature centers in our own community. And I've been partnering with them to design a whole week's teacher field trip in July. So with this group of teachers, we'll go to the zoo in the morning and do some exploration around life science. And so it'll be PD in those spaces, as well as give us the opportunity to look at those field trip experiences as if we are our students, to give feedback to these organizations. So we're going to be looking at a place where there's horse riding therapy, and we're going to museums and talk about primary artifacts. Just the idea of creating something to build a little magic for someone else brings me all the joy in the world. So if you're a whiteboard person and you have to sketch all your ideas around it, mine might look like your books around the house at this point. This whiteboard has these ideas and this one over here. But just that idea of creation brings a lot of joy. And in the chat, we've had folks saying more about listening to some music that brings them joy, eating healthy, exercising. And Lakeisha has been making meal bags for her students during the break. I think that had to be kind of fun. Especially when you found out when the students liked a particular snack or this, that, the other, you'll just have little elements of surprise and delight inside their bags. So keep them coming, friends. We're looking for more along the way. All right. So last question. What are you going to celebrate from this year? What are you going to reflect and say, I did this and I am so proud of myself through this past year? Luisa, what about you?
I was just thinking, I went back to doing a lot of the things that I did when I was a new teacher that I did because they were so fun and I wasn't worried about looking foolish or being silly. Like in kindergarten, we do a 20-minute dance party every day. And because I teach in dual language, I do it in English and Spanish. And I look so foolish. And the kids look so foolish. Today, we're reenacting the 3 Billy Goats Gruff, and the kids were standing on chairs. And the last 10 years, I would think, oh, goodness, what if somebody walks in? They're going to say, why are kids standing on chairs? And I thought, you know what? We're in a pandemic, and the kids need to have fun. And you know what? They're learning rhyme, and they're learning how to sing, and they're connecting it to, the story that we're reading. I'm going to do those things that I know are good for kids, that bring me joy. I'm going to be really intentional every day about doing something that's joyful for me and my kiddos. We should be having a big belly laugh every day. And if we're not, we're doing it wrong. So I'm just going to keep doing that because it was the best part. And, my kids always say, like, are you sure you're an adult? You laugh way too much. I'm like, yes, this is right, honey. We do laugh. This is how adults should be. They should be happy and smile and have fun with life.
And learning is fun, doggone it, Louisa. It is a joy. Learning should be a joy. And that you are finding joy in that space with the littles, that has to be the best teaching experience of your entire year, or just those moments. Arlinda, what are you going to celebrate this year?
Well, I will tell you. So, when my school was remote for 7 months out of the year, and one of my big things I was just so concerned about was making that like relationship and that connection with my kids. When I heard Louise talking about what she did on first grade, and so think I'm most proud of the fact that I was able to actually like do the things that I love doing with my kids on Zoom, and then also watching them like grow. I had some kids who were kind of like reluctant to be on camera, and they would be in the bed, and I was like trying to figure out ways to get them out. And I had this one little boy, one day I looked up and he got out of his bed and he had his desk ready and he was just so excited about learning. I was like, I was able to make a connection through Zoom. And then when I saw them in person, it was just so amazing. Like to say, hey, I built a relationship through technology that I thought was going to be so hard to do. And so I'm just most proud of the fact that you can establish a relationship with children no matter what, no matter what's going on. And in turn, I think I wrote on Facebook, they pushed me to give my best, and I was able to push them to give their best. So we learn together and we celebrate together. So I'm just excited about the fact that we are kind of can do anything. Teachers can. Even though we do need self care, we should be proud of ourselves.
100% agree. 100% agree. We've got a question from the audience from Mark, and he wants to know if there are other suggestions we should do specifically for new young teachers who may be a little disillusioned that this was my first year teaching. Marie, what would you suggest for that?
I think nothing goes further than being able to for it to be normalized. And for somebody who's a veteran to be able to normalize that. And again, that's that level of vulnerability to be able to share with them your own challenges and to help them understand that this is not necessarily about me being new here. It's also just about me being human here. And I think that would be one of the best and easiest things that you can do is surround them with the opportunity for their feelings to be normalized by those who have a great level of experience.
And Taya, what about you as administrator? What have you done for your early educators this year, or advice you have?
So I think one of the things that we've tried to do is really the same things that I'm celebrating is celebrating every little piece and continuing to do that. I think, you know, we've always encouraged that, I think, in education and for sure in the world of therapy of celebrate every little positive step forward and continuing to do that. So one of the ways that I continue to do that is, you know, when we're talking with you know, our staff, we're talking with our teachers. So, you know, being able to celebrate those positive things or those memories or what students have inspired you to say or do. So kind of really using the words and the voices of our students. When a student said to me recently, and I asked her permission if I could quote her at some point, because she had been through a lot, and her boyfriend had died tragically, and you know, we were talking about moving forward, doing planning, what's happening, and so I've been holding on to her words and I told her, she inspired me. She said, you know what, I'm working on being gentle with myself in my grief. And I really held on to that. And so when I think about all the, you know, things that we're celebrating and what we're encouraging is hold on to the words of the wisdom of our students as well as each other, because there's just so much power in, you know, whether it's the 6-year-old saying, do adults really laugh that much? Just like they said to Louisa. So I think holding on to those pieces have been really powerful, and remembering to center and stop and pause and find the positive as well. I'll add one more thing. I'm going to put it in the chat, which is really encouraging us to use. And I am going to celebrate that I did this year. practice what I preach, try to do a little modeling, is an educator resilience and trauma informed self-care kind of self-assessment, because it's easy to say, it's much harder to do and to pause. And so that's something just as a tool that we can use. So I'll throw that in the chat as well.
Arlinda, let me pass back over to you for a moment. We were talking about this music, and I know you've called this a happiness trigger. Can you talk to us more about some happiness triggers?
Yes, we often always talk about things, our anger triggers, things that trigger us to be angry, but I have happiness triggers, and we all have something that's our happiness trigger, that one or two or three things that we love to do that just gives us a lot of energy and a lot of ability to do what we like. Like I love music, like I was saying before. And when I was a little girl, my mom would tell me to clean up my room, and I would couldn't do it until I would cut on music. And I would cut on my music, and before I know it, I was cleaning up my room. And so even to this day, when I'm getting ready to pack up my room for the summer, the teachers come by, I have my music on. That's one of my happiness triggers. Some people's happiness trigger may be a certain smell, like a candle they like, or their favorite drink, or even like clean sheets. Whatever your favorite thing is, that one thing that gives you joy, that's your happiness trigger. And so when you're feeling a certain way and you need to kind of self encourage yourself or self motivate yourself, find your happy trigger and just engulf yourself in it. I could play music all day if I could. I play it in my classroom when the kids are gone in the afternoon. There's something I need to do. I put on that music and I find out I can do anything and time just flies.
Well, two of us have talked about having those good belly laughs, and then we've also talked about these music moments of just finding the joy in the little things. And I really think that's been the message that I think we've all learned this year, is find those little things, the little things that make a difference all the way around. And Taya, I know you talked a little bit about this yesterday, but what are the little things that we should seek?
When I think about just those little things, it truly is those moments that can escape us. And so that's part of why I actually encourage, because I have had to do this, is putting it on our calendar to pay attention. And when I think about those little things, I also think about the things that make me laugh. So those little things might be that I went to the beach with my family, and it was freezing cold, but we were out there at the beach enjoying the great outdoors. But I found a rock that was literally the shape of a heart. And, I just was so drawn to it, and I've held on to it. I've carried it in my pocket. So I think the more that we can just seize those little moments, the better. And those little things come in so many shapes and sizes. So going back to those relationships and those little things, sometimes it is a little thing that we can reach out and say, hey, will you be that, can you be that accountability buddy for me? Right? I've had family and friends and people at work do this for me, and I've tried to do that for them. But it's those little things where accountability buddies don't just have to be about, holding the mirror up and being really intense. It can be that random moment. So I will often start my day now by sending, I can be a little sassy at times. So sending some funny little like memes or, gifts or different things along the way to, some of our staff, as well as some friends, just to start the day that way. Somebody's thinking about me, and people do that for me as well. And those are some little things that keep me going.
And Marie, I know it's also the little things of walks with intentional focus. Can you talk to us about your walks?
Oh, yeah. One of the things that I really have done for myself is to just take a walk without any time constraints. So it's going to be 30 minutes, it's going to be 3 miles, it is literally just the idea that I am experiencing the outdoors, I'm experiencing my surroundings, I'm being conscious. And I oftentimes will pick something that I need to hold myself to. For example, I'll need to find 6 things that are yellow on this walk, and it just causes me to pay attention, and really just be right in that moment. And again, finding something yellow outdoors may not be as easy, but again, it takes my mind off of racing onto what I should have done, what I should be doing, what I should say next time, and not really being able to enjoy just the time that I am there. there. So it's really important for me to be able to kind of do that. And to, like I said, to pick something, or blue car, how many of them can I count on this walk? It can be anything, but it just allows me to really slow down and not be, in the past or in the future, and really just keep me focused in the now. And one of the other things I'd like to add when we start talking about the little things is one of the little things that I think we should take with us, is the 2-letter word no. And saying no, just try it to say no. But the most important part is to say no without explanation. Not tie yourself to needing to explain why it's a no. Sometimes when we start talking about self-care, is that because we feel guilty about saying no, we feel like we need to give a reason. And then a lot of times that causes us to feel a level of resentment. I shouldn't have to explain myself. Well, just say no without explanation. That's a little thing to do, but every now and then, just try it. Just say, no, I won't be able to, or no, it's a no for me. One of the things that's been good about the pandemic is that of our free time, we've had fewer requests. So we haven't had to use the word no, because guess what? There is no party to go to. So there is no party for me to try to decide that I need to be at all 3 of those events today. So I didn't have to say no, but going forward, it is something. There's a book called The Year of Yes. And it's by Shonda Rhimes. And in the book, one of the things that's interesting about The Year of Yes is that learning to say no without explanation is one of the things that she highlighted the most, and just being able to do that. So I just think that's really a good little thing for us to at least practice so that we can get better at.
And I'm going to say that's the perfect wrap up to a fantastic conversation. Thank you, ladies, all of you, for your insight, your thoughts, your wisdom, and just your willingness to be vulnerable and say, it's okay. We're going to just say yes to belly laughs, and no, I'm not adding more to my plate, and no, I'm not going to do summer school, but yes, I'm going to read the book I want to. So I am so proud to be with all of you here today. Thank you for your time. Audience, thank you for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you on another Teacher Talk in the future. Have a great day, everyone. Great evening.